I'm just going to share with you a few stories about communities that are doing this. But before I do, would you share some of your stories of how you're doing some of this work, of answering these questions in your community? Any brave souls out there who feel like you have a bright spot? Please.
I work with the Nurse Family Partnership Program in Connecticut, and one of our goals is to reduce the toxic stress in the lives of the mothers so that we will change the lives of the babies and the mothers forever.
Perfect.
And it's very hard work.
And have you seen any results from that?
Oh, our birth weights are very good. The entry into prenatal care is very early. We're making some very strong connections with mental health services. So I think we are.
So that's a bright spot within this community that can help you get there. Anybody else got a bright spot they'd be willing to share? Nobody doing good work? Can I ask you a question back then? Oh, perfect.
Paths are accessible to all. I'm sorry about that. And one of the things we realized from this session, but also before this session, is that when we're trying to partner with the right people and the people with the lived experience, that we actually don't have anybody with a disability on our coalition or represented in our groups. And that is one of the reasons that we're actually inspired to do the work we're doing. So we're working really hard to make sure we're tapping into the right communities and meeting the people's needs who have the lived experience so that they can give us the information that we couldn't possibly understand or even have experienced ourselves.
Thank you. You know, the people who actually have experience in those conditions, that's like a wealth of knowledge about what would actually work. And so consider what it looks like to integrate them in a meaningful way in the process. Yes?
I'm Linda Fulmer, and I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. And in 2009, the United Way of Tarrant County released a study that they had completed. They'd spent either 3 or 5 years trying to fix childhood obesity in an elementary school in southeast Fort Worth. They had one school that was the intervention school and a second one that was the study school. In the intervention school, the comparison school. In the intervention school, they aggressively trained the students and their families on what to eat and how to exercise and how to stop getting more obese. In both schools, they measured the weight, height, waist circumference of the students. And at the conclusion of the study, they found that the students that had been educated learned all that they'd been taught, but their numbers were getting worse. By contrast, in the comparison school, the numbers were holding steady. What was the difference? Well, in the comparison school, they were kind of close to a grocery store, and they were also close to a community center. And the study school didn't have those amenities in their community. So that was something that was very important. Since that time, all of our institutions in Tarrant County have continued to educate the heck out of people about what to eat and how to exercise. In 2014, we had some community meetings in southeast Fort Worth, and we asked the community, what is it that you can do to reduce chronic disease in this area? And not one person said, we need more classes. Instead, they said, we need better access to food. We need better access to safe places to exercise. We need to build our social connections within our communities and across our communities. And so that's what's informed our work.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Linda. to me, like that's the kind of perfect, what I would describe as a fail forward story, where you, and where often what we do is we get that data back, but then we don't do anything about it, right? We just go back to, oh, we're all wired to teach people diet and exercise. Like we just haven't gotten through. I've done that. And what you realize, it's actually when you realize, oh, we actually all ought to be focusing on making sure that food is accessible, that there are those social connections. So it's really wonderful that you're beginning to shift toward that. Did I see another hand? Oh,
I want to tell a story about something that we worked on that health was not our initial thought process. So in Providence, Rhode Island, there's a neighborhood called Oneyville, and Oneyville is well below the state median income, very high immigrant population, and there's what should be a park along a river. Now, along this river, nobody went. Kids were told, don't ever go across Manton Avenue, which was the avenue leading to the park. They were told, stay away. All there are drug dealers and prostitutes there, and that is indeed what was there. A Greenway organization received federal money to build a park. But as we started really talking as a community about what that meant, we realized that if we didn't do something else, that park would never be used because it would never be safe. So working together with the police department, with artists, with a community development corporation, we put in place a plan. A city street was reopened so the police could patrol the park, and affordable housing was built across the street from the park, both home ownership and rental housing, so that now there are eyes on the park. The police can patrol the park. There is a bike path that runs through the entire park to the next city. And what has changed is people use that bike path. People are outside exercising, they're outside moving. There are even in the winter people cross-country skiing in this park. And so we had to start to take a look back and say, well, we need to start thinking about what that has done for the entire community in terms of their ability to be healthy and get out there and exercise in a park that at one point was so dangerous that nobody went there.
it's a wonderful story of seeing the big picture.
My name is Meryl Smith. I'm from a large District Health Department number 10 WIC program in Michigan. And it's been 4 years since our district implemented the Loving Support Breastfeeding peer-to-peer program. And we started with one breastfeeding peer, and now we have 7. What's great about this peer-to-peer program is exactly what it is. It is a woman that's been on WIC, a woman that breastfed, establishes relationships with our pregnant women, and trust. And when we implemented this program in 2011, our initiation rate was 58%. And as of this year, our initiation rate is 78%.
Yay.
We have a lot of work to do on duration, but we're getting there, so we're pretty proud of that.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. So it's really, it's really that process of, it's when you realize how many really rich assets are there in the people themselves, when we create equity in our own processes to have people who are most affected be partners and leaders with us in not just giving us an assessment of their needs, but an actual real responses to what would work and help guide us and how and each other in creating it, that creates sustainable equity. Does that make sense? So just think about that. I will tell you, it also gives you answers much faster and outcomes much faster because you just avoid 20 things that wouldn't have worked in the first place because you engaged people not just in identifying the needs, but in actually creating the solutions. I'm just going to share a few of those stories with you. At Cambridge Health Alliance, you know, I told you about that obesity work. We said, that's pretty good. Where else does this apply? And we realized in childhood asthma, also kids are spending more time in the schools. So and the schools didn't actually want their kids out because they were hospitalized. And so we began wondering, how could we how could we help them? So as we said, where are the children, who has access to them, what are the resources? We created a partnership between the schools, the public health, and primary care, because kids were at school or at home or in neighborhoods most of the time. We had clear accountability, but we created a shared registry that everybody had access to across departments. We partnered with the school nurses so that the teachers could identify quickly that a kid was having trouble breathing much earlier than they would show up in an emergency room, and that the nurse had access to the registry and could easily understand whether they'd run out of their controller meds, their steroid inhalers, and we could get that filled and back on track ASAP. And of course, primary care had teams that did the same. The Department of Public Health, in partnership with housing, actually would send people to homes to visit people and would do the education in the home for what it means. They sent nurses out as public health nurses. But of course, what they noticed is if there was mold in the ceiling, and if there was, we worked with the housing department to address that. And by doing that, these very simple, practical, common sense things, these were the outcomes. We had a 90% reduction in hospitalizations and a 50% reduction in emergency room visits for kids with asthma across our entire population. And this began a party. Like, it just began a party. We were like, oh, this work is so much easier when we're all working on it together. That's kind of amazing. We said, what about smoking? And so it almost like honestly didn't matter what we started with. What mattered was that we picked something that everybody could get behind and then just begin to say, what could we all do together? So with tobacco, of course, the public health department cared about tobacco because you're looking at the epidemic. And so they said we can create smoke-free policies and implement them, just as the mayor had done, to think about making the city tobacco-free and the community tobacco-free. The housing department cared about this because they cared about the health of their residents, but really they cared about the fact that the housing units smelled bad and that it was a fire risk for them, right? So they created rent incentives for people to be able to go to smoking cessation groups, and the health system paid for peer-to-peer supports within that would actually lead these groups that were in every public housing unit. And that was really, it was just so much smarter for people to have that kind of just-in-time support at the mailbox rather than having to come into something to get that kind of support. It's real-time, neighbor-to-neighbor kind of coaching. It became a primary care said, well, make it a vital sign, and trained up all the medical assistants to be able to do motivational interviewing. And it became something that was so simple to do. It was almost harder to not do it if you were a doctor, to refer someone who had said, I'm ready to do something to quit, to somebody who would call them within 48 hours, and that was paid through the community affairs department. And then the hospitals went smoke-free. They saw opportunities whenever somebody came in to actually enter as a smoking cessation intervention opportunity. And by doing this, we were able to reduce, again, the smoking rate for a safety net population down to 14%, which is a pretty good rate. Of course, there's still more to go. When we looked at who wasn't smoking, it actually turned out most of our population would gotten to about 10%, which is really good. And of course, we'd had amazingly support public health efforts through the CDC and through our Massachusetts commissioners and the media and other engagements. We learned that it was actually our people with mental health issues that had a 40% risk of smoking. The numbers were skewed. And that's where looking at your data, not just as averages, but looking at that who isn't thriving within your data, looking at using that as a way of understanding where there may be gaps in equity of health outcomes is, I think, a really good methodology that we found. And as we did that, we began then thinking, how can we create a connected system about health and well-being and mental health across the community? And this kind of spiral of collaboration, like that's the kind of spiral you want to be in, because now we're addressing everything from opiate abuse to mental health to violence across our entire community, not ever feeling alone. Not ever feeling isolated, feeling like we have a wealth of resources and our job is to harness them. Not because we got more funding, but because we could see the resources each other had and help each other. I'm not going to go into the details of this. I'd love to, how much time do I have left, Monty? 10 minutes-ish. I'm just going to share with you a story. So how many people, you've heard about the school to prison pipeline? So in some of our youth, did you know that for youth, do you know what the reincarceration rate is within 5 years? I'm sorry? About 60%, right? 60%. And in some of these communities, it's an 80% risk of getting into that pipeline in the first place. That's a systems issue, right? That is a system that is creating a result. So when we think about that as a systems issue, we need to be able to map out the system and figure out how to take that down. And I just wanted to end by sharing this one story of how people have done that. So this is UTEC. It works in Lowell, Massachusetts, a community that has 33 street gangs within it of many different configurations. And UTEC mapped out the system of what happens when someone goes in. Oh,
The Sweetwater program is actually how UTEC got started. It's the oldest running program at UTEC. It's an outreach program. We target a lot of the hotspots in Lowell, gang hotspots, drug hotspots, places where homeless youth might be hanging out. Building relationships with them, helping out with resources. It's gotten a lot better than it used to be. It's come a long way. Pretty much all of Lowell's thriving right now, but there's still some hotspots. There's still gang activity. In that respect, it's like a lot of other cities.
it's all led by people who are former gang shot callers. So it's at peer-to-peer, literally taken to peer leadership in this. It looks like the video is hanging, so if it's okay, I'm just going to, in the interest of time, just share with you. So they realized that they need to do the intervention up front. The best people to do that were people who are former gang members who could really relate with people. Then they created, as people go into prison and come out, and remember, 60% of the population, if you want to get the population, they're already, that's where they are. They actually created a transition coach. It turns out that you have a whole lifestyle and a way of thinking and different skills that you develop. And it's hard to know, as somebody said, what it looks like to go from outlaw to citizen and to make it. That doesn't feel easy. And there are a whole bunch of structural barriers we've created that make it hard to even get a driver's license. It costs $500, or to get housing, or to get a job once you've been in prison. By creating a transition coach, by creating job creation programs, so they use social enterprise, whether it's mattress recycling, restaurants, so they train kids up in other skills, but also give them actual jobs from the beginning. And in education, they've been able to reduce the reincarceration rate from 60% to 2%. And they're not alone. Programs that take this kind of peer-to-peer approach have achieved breakthrough outcomes across the country. For people with chronic recidivism and with Iron Tribe, they've been able to reduce it to 4%. So I share that story to challenge us, to challenge ourselves about what's possible, to set audacious goals. For us, it was 100 million people living healthier lives by 2020. To figure out, to not assume that these chronic problems where we seem to have plateaued, or these social issues that what seems like an equity gap is just a big morass of things that no one can figure out. To believe that it may be possible to go from 60% to 2% for reincarceration, and that what it requires is for us to think differently, for us to act differently, and for us to recognize the wealth of partnerships that are possible to achieve that. And so, do I still have 5 minutes, Monty? Perfect. So, at your tables in this last few minutes, I invite you to there's these questions that follow that framework of leading from within, leading together, leading for outcomes, and leading for equity. I'd love for you just to spend a little time, just 1 minute thinking by yourself, and then talking with others at your table about what this looks like for you. So I'd love to be in on some of your conversations, and I can't run around the room fast enough. So I wondered if you would be willing to share just one curious question or reflection that came up for you as you began to think about these questions. So what are you thinking about as you think about this? You guys were all talking in absolute silence, right?
We're from Thornton, Colorado, and we were talking about how we want to get more like actual residents, patients, community members involved. Like that was a big impact of what you said.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Judith Thompson. I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin. This meeting has been really transformational for me. As a busy obstetrician and gynecologist, I'm a single practitioner, solo, and coming here, seeing all the work that everyone has been doing and involved, and I've been in my little corner just taking care of my patients and knowing I'm doing a good job, I'm taking care of them, and realizing the greater work that needs to be done. One of my patients invited me to become part of this leadership team. And as you mentioned in this paper, whose life will get better because we were here? And I'm thinking, whose life will be better from me being here? And I know I have greater work to do. And I'm going back with enthusiasm to try to improve the lives of those around me, not just my little corner with my patients, but the greater population at large.
Thank you. There's a question. There's a hand up back there.
Hi, I'm with the American Heart Association, and we do some work with M&R. They've been really supporting us. And one of the things that Lori Frazina always tells us is that we're not working for communities. We need to be working with and within communities. And this whole presentation kind of resonated with that thought, that we have to remember we're not doing for, we're doing with.
Thank you.
Dan Robinson with the Central Wisconsin Group, and what we've been working on, at least initially, is the building of a coalition with the members of the white community, but also 3 tribal communities in our area. And we were talking about this and thinking back to what you were saying about it almost didn't matter which issue you picked as long as you were learning how to work together on that. And that's kind of the experience that we've had just starting out with this, is that not only are we starting to build some bridges between the white community and the Native American nations, 3 of them in our area, but also helping them start to build some bridges because they haven't had a lot of experience working together on certain projects. So it almost didn't matter what we picked. Like I said, it's just been that good experience of trying to learn how to work together.
Thank you. So I want to invite you to consider taking these conversations you're beginning today with one another and continuing them when you leave this room. I don't mean by that you have to do some big, complicated, like I'm sure you have an email list and that you should reply all to everyone. Don't do that. But think about what it means to see each other as your partners on this journey, as your friends, and figuring out how to make it, to really learn what it takes to do that. Would you mind going to the website, Ryan? And so one of the things that one tool that we wanted to offer you from our 100 million journey that might be helpful, that our partners at Community Commons has really helped us to build and use, is something that makes our work visible to one another and helps us be in conversation with one another. And that's what we call the map of the movement. And so this is just people who have signed up for 100 million across communities that have said, here's what we're working on. And you can, as you go down to any one of those dots, as you click in, you can actually go all the way in and find what different communities all over are beginning to work on, and find who else might be interested in a thing that's similar to you. So consider ways in which you can find those other people to ask each other questions and be part of a wider movement of hundreds of communities that are on this journey together, that are figuring out, oh, we're able to use peer-to-peer supports to improving breastfeeding rates. How does that connect with, and what you're doing with nurse family partners? And how does that connect in, as you think about that child getting older and older, with what's happening in the schools, and what could we learn from, in this case, a program in South Africa that does a cradle-to-career approach that's taken people in post-apartheid South Africa from a 40 to 99% graduation rate, knowing that the high school graduation rate is the most important long-term predictor of health. And so what we'd say is, don't be terminally unique, don't innovate alone, be part of a journey, be part of a community. And I thank you today for letting me be part of your community with you. Bye-bye.
Show out. Love and power. Thank you, Shoma. Just what we needed this morning. So let's take a break. 15 minutes, no more than 15 minutes. Let's be in here, and we're going to start moving towards reflecting forward.
Yeah. Well, I know that we're not all here because I think some people are still checking out, but like to just start with asking you, thanking all of you for your participation. I think that your continued attendance here and the work that you're going to be doing, we're looking forward to great things coming from you all. And when we meet again a year from now, you'll be the ones up here telling your stories, and we can't wait. We can't wait to see what you're going to be telling us about all the great work that you've done. I want to start by just saying some thank yous, because an event like this doesn't just happen. There are a lot of people behind the scenes, and I know a lot of these people are not in the room, but if they are, I would like them to please stand up when I mention them. So we've had terrific AV support. So Ryan and Michelle over there, it might seem seamless, but yeah, those of you that have worked on conferences, it doesn't just happen. We have an excellent meeting planner. She's been working with the hotel on the meals and that kind of thing. So if you see her around when you go get your lunch, your box lunch, Barbara Ozetta and her team, so be sure to give her thanks. We have a planning team so that this is a joint effort with the 5 organizations and CDC. And so I'm going to name the people who've been on the planning team, and if I name you, will you please stand if you're in the room? So we have from National WIC Association, Elizabeth, from ACOG, Anna Maria, from Heart Association, Laura and Sarah, from APA, Elizabeth, from APHA, Matt, from Sophie, we have Ankita and Nicolette and Elaine and Bridget, from DHPE, and I'm from DHPE, I'm the CEO. We have Tameta and LaQuisa, and Cheryl. And from CDC, we had Yvette and Leslie and Ankita. So you can see it took a team. And just as you're working with a team to do the work that you're doing, putting on this workshop has been a team. And of course, we had Batman and Superman. David and Monty. So, I think we need to. And then I'd also like to ask anyone who was a speaker or a presenter, facilitator, if you would stand. I think we'd still, okay, I guess most of the people are checking out now. A couple of announcements. If you signed up for transportation to the airport and you want to share a ride, the bellman knows that and will be arranging the cabs. So just go down to the Bell station and tell them you're with this group, and starting at 2 p.m. they will be having some shared rides. And if you haven't signed up, it's still okay. You can go down and probably get in with a group so that you can get, share a taxi. And make sure you leave 2 hours before your flight. Hopefully nobody will be leaving before the workshop is over. Also, if you are CHES and signed up for continuing education credit hours for CHES, be sure to return this form to the registration desk. There will be an evaluation of the conference, and we hope everyone will do it. If you're applying for continuing education credit either through APA or CHES, then you have to fill out the evaluation form. The evaluation form is online, and you will be sent a link to it probably later today or tomorrow. So please fill that out. Okay, so want to sort of model a little bit. Soma talked about the Daily Mile, and we've talked about physical activity. So as I do my little spiel this morning, what I want to have happen is whenever I name the organization that sponsored you coming, I want you to stand. Okay? So you have to listen and pay attention. So when I say, like, National WIC Association, if you're a subrecipient or if you're with the national org, then you have to stand. Okay? Got it? Okay. So, let's say go ahead. So we'll go ahead with the next slide. In the past, I have a clicker. Okay. In the past 2 days, you have spent time with your team, and you have also spent time with others who are funded by the same Category A national organization, either the American Heart Association, American Planning Association, or National WIC Association. Okay, you have heard from others who've done similar work in the community. As you prepare to return to your homes, you'll continue to have the support of all of the 5 national organizations. So, all 5 national organizations. Okay. The 2 Category B funded national organizations, the Directors of Health Promotion and Education and the Society of Public Health Education, will join your funder, to provide webinars and tools for your use. Among the tools are 3 resources that Cheryl mentioned Monday afternoon and that I will show you now. Okay, so the first one is the online community. Yesterday I was at a breakout session and someone asked for a list of participants so that you could continue to network with one another before you leave. The online community has created a tool that you can use to continue the networking. And if you look at the, can I move the cursor or the pointer? Okay, so if you look to where it's set under the title, where it's a little green dot says Directory and Features, up top, and a little like green arrow. There. Okay. So if you go there, okay, then you will see a list of everyone that is in the community. So everyone here should be in the community because you had to get on that to register to come, okay? And you can update and give information, but if you click on the name, then you can send a message to that person through the online community. Okay, so another thing that you can do is if you go to where it says Options, okay, right there, you can send a message to everyone in the group. So, although Soma said, don't send a lot of blast messages. Okay. So on the landing page, another thing you can do is if you click, if you go to group documents, so you can see down below there are some boxes. So the blue box that says group documents, you'll be able to find all the presentations from this workshop. Now, they are not posted there yet, but people have asked, will I be able to get the slides? The reason they're not posted yet is, I'm sure this never happens with you, but sometimes people change their presentations at the last minute. So we don't post them until after they've done the presentation so that we can have what they actually presented. And now, I will say if a presenter has not given us their slides or given us permission, we can't post it. But this is a closed community. I mean, you have to have a password. You have to be a member of the community to get access. So, so it's for your use and for people that are on the project. But you can also, because you're on that community and all the documents under group documents, you can access templates. You can also access the presentations from last year. So they're all there now that you're part of the group. If you go back to the landing page, there are some other things. You can see that there is a link to the Division of Community Health, which is CDC. CDC, folks, you got to stand up. If you're with CDC, okay, I mentioned you. Okay. And so you can reach their website. You can also reach the websites of each of the national organizations, so the National WIC Association, American Planning Association, American Heart Association, the project sites. Okay. And you can also request the resource directory with a black box, which we'll come back to, and then there's a green box that says request support. And if you go to the request support, this is a place where you can request technical assistance and support. So we want you to know that once you leave, I know it's a lot of information that you've gotten, but there's a lot more that might be useful to you. So if there's something that you would like, it would be helpful to you, and you don't know where to go, just put in a request there online. It's an online form, and it will go to us at DHPE and Sophie. We will collaborate with your Category A partner. All those, okay. And to be able to find the best solution for the need that you have. And just to remind you from this again from what Cheryl said at the beginning, so some of the training and technical assistance that we have, there are the workshops such as this event. We will be doing webinars, and you'll be getting notices of those. We also have facilitated calls called Ask the Expert. So after we have a webinar, if you want to actually talk to and interact with, have like office hours with the person. We have peer calls, and I think, and I know that the American Planning Association and the APHA have a peer-to-peer network also, and that's open to everybody, not just to people on that project. We can also do custom TA if there's something that's a unique need. And then we have the tools and resources, the online group, which I've been showing you for subrecipients. We have the online course, which you took before you came, and we have a resource directory. Now, the resource directory has a lot of resources. The online community, the group documents, all the things there are things that are specific to this project, like webinar archives and that kind of thing. In the resource directory, these are resources that were selected because they're relevant to the kind of work that you'll be doing. But it might be things that are from any one of the funded partners, Category A's, Category B's, CDC, that we think will help you do your work. And also some seminal documents, such as the just released National Physical Activity Plan that just was released last week. So if there are some big things like this that come out, we'll probably it will be part of the email communications that you get from your Category A organization, and when there are new postings to the resource directory. So, just want you to know that we are here to support you in your work, and we all want you to be successful. So if there are resources that you need, if there are questions that you have, just ask. And DHPE and Sophie, with all the Category A organizations and CDC, will provide the support that you need to be successful. So with that, I want to thank CDC, the dedicated project officers and leaders in the Division of Community Health. All of those on the planning team. Hope you feel that your time was well spent and that you will return home inspired and ready to move forward, making your community a healthier place for all who live and work there. And now I will turn the mic over to Monty.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, DPHE and Sophie, for all that you're doing. So I think we are hearing what our job is, what our role is. It's, to reclaim our power, our passion, our love to go back and create healthier, more equitable communities, and literally the lives of people every day. And we've kind of reached that point where, at least if you're like me, our minds are kind of starting to think, uh-oh, what time is my flight again? Did I pack? Should I grab something? And that's completely normal. We're already starting to transition a little bit to hum, if we're honest. And so I'm going to ask you just to focus for a moment and actually take a deep breath. If you feel comfortable just shutting your eyes for just a moment. Just kind of open up and take a really deep breath in through your nose. And exhaling through your mouth. And trying to forget about the things that are going to take care of themselves. You all are going to make it to the airport. Your luggage is going to get packed. Again, taking a really deep breath in with your nose. Exhaling, trying to center ourselves for just a moment. Maybe breathe in again, really feeling the abundance that's in this room. Kind of breathe in that abundance. You can exhale if you want. It's okay to inhale abundance. Breathe in the privilege of the work that we get to do here and when we get back home. And I'd like you to, in a moment, just with your team, take a minute. This is not a conversation that can be done in 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm not inviting you to just jump through a hoop for a task for me or CDC or the national partners. But I'd like you to just, while we're here in this space, while you're here together, while we're present, is to take a look at, we talked about 2 takeaways. We talked about being intentional. We actually talked about 4 takeaways. We boiled it down to make it a little simpler for this piece. You talked about being intentional about what you wanted to do, and we also said, be expected to be surprised, right? So for you and your team, what are the 2 most significant takeaways of kind of being here? And for that might be partly, hey, we're focusing on the wrong thing, or maybe, hey, we need to think about what we're doing, how we're doing it is more importantly. So start to just talk about that. If you have time and you want to talk about what are the 2 most important things that you do over the next 1 to 3 months, that's great. Given the limited time, I really like you to make sure that you have enough of a conversation for the next 5 or 7 minutes to just kind of what's on your heart and your mind. You're going to have a little bit more time in your respective category A's to kind of talk about next steps. So I'd like you just to kind of talk for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then I'm going to check back in with you. I know there's a lot more to talk about, but in the interest of keeping you on time and making it to the airport and everything else that you're going to want to be doing and packing, I'd like to, again, sorry to cut off some conversations here. I'd like to just for a few minutes invite you, to reflect one more time. What's most significant takeaways in particular that you're kind of leaving here with? And David and I will run the mic. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of offering some of that up, that would be awesome.
I'm Sue. I'm from Kansas. And I learned a long time ago about a railroad model. To get anything done, a train needs to go equally down 2 tracks. And we came to the realization that we were spending all our time, or a lot of energy and time, on one track, and that's the product side. And this conference kind of brought us back to, we need to pay attention to the process. And that's relationships, how you get things done, all the things that we heard about this morning. So we want our train to move a lot faster, and so we're going to pay attention to process as well as product.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Who else? What over here? Okay. Thanks.
So Michelle from Southern Illinois again. I'd like to say Carbondale, Illinois, but I suspect nobody knows where that is. Southern Illinois, Little Egypt, if you remember that from when we started. But we were talking about the real important part of blending, actually, and we're part of the APA piece, planning and public health, and how those sectors and how crossing sectors really matters, and it puts everything together. And I had mentioned something about disability earlier, is you find a lot of unlikely partners when actually they were probably likely. You just need to think about it. So that's one of the things, the big picture, and looking at who we're serving and how we can put it together and build on our strengths.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, this is Anna from the American Planning Association, and we talked a little bit among our national staff about some of our takeaways and what we'd like to do in the next few months. And it's been so inspiring to hear the stories and reflections from everyone in the room, not just from our Plan for Health grantees, and thinking about how we can take what we've been talking about here and spread it around to our entire membership of APA and APHA so that more and more people can be involved and know what you all are working on and can replicate it more and more in their local communities, even if they didn't have the opportunity to be funded through this project.
Yeah, thanks. Part of a movement. Who else? A couple more. Takeaways, what's significant that you're kind of leaving here with? Please.
I'm Janine from Loudoun County, Virginia. Our group has been working for a while, but we feel like we have been working a little bit in a vacuum. So it's really, really nice to know everybody here and to know that we can share resources and with each other. And I think that we're going to be able to really take it to the next level after having been here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gail from 5 Sandoval in New Mexico, and I'd like to follow up and say also I think networking is one of the biggest takeaways that I will have from this meeting. Second takeaway also is, in addition to listening to my peers, is listen to my constituents. Really get to understand what their needs are. We thought we knew what we needed to do. We thought we knew what the community needed, and we're beginning to peel Selma's onion.
Shema would be so proud. I mean, I think it is a mind shift for us, not just, to really do this with our communities. It's been said in so many different ways. I mean, it's a powerful way to move forward. And it's obvious, but we don't always do it. Yeah, there's over here. It's your last chance to talk in the large group. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm Molly from Louisville, Kentucky, and I wanted to thank our team members who brought this conference together. This was highly productive, and many times you'll go to a conference or a meeting and may not leave with some productive information that you can take back and replicate. So this was really helpful for us. So thank you for those who pulled this together.
Yep. Thanks. As Susan indicated, it was very much a team effort. Robert, would you? I know you and I talked. You want to? Any final thoughts from you?
Sure. Thank you, Monty.
Robert.
I also want to extend our thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy days, recognizing that this is another job that you've taken on top of your regular job, and even also the time that you've taken away from your friends, family, and other coworkers. So we really all appreciate you all coming down to New Orleans for that. And then also, too, I want to just also acknowledge that we're in a room of like-minded people where, it's a safe place where everyone seems to care about the same things. Everyone's about progress and about reducing death and early disability that are due to chronic diseases. But I just want to challenge you and encourage you to stay the course. Try to win every day. That you're going to be going out back into the environments where everyone doesn't necessarily share the same type of opinion. And sometimes with life, we get to run with the wind, like the last 2.5 days. But then oftentimes we also have to run into the wind.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also now all leaving to go to the airport. And so with airplanes, they shift the runway to turn off, they take off into the wind. Because going into the wind is what gives the airplane its lift. And so with that, then I bid you safe travels and good speed, stay the course, and use those winds to help take your efforts to the next level. So thank you again.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate it. So the thing about being part of the duo, as David knows, is that you have to be very forgiving because the duo sometimes mess up. I'd asked David if he wouldn't mind kind of sharing some last thoughts, and I was going to let him go next, but it's always a privilege to work with David, so I'm going to hand it to my partner in crime.
I just want to, on behalf of Community Initiatives, thank you all. It's been an honor. Monty and I, as you know and have learned, do hundreds and have done hundreds of these types of events. Each time's unique and special because of the people and the commitment and the passion, and we certainly felt this among this group, and so we want to thank you for the opportunity to work with and serve you. So safe travels. You've got one last round of meeting with your Category A's. Box lunches are right through the elevator hallway on the other side. They're already set up. Grab a box lunch on to your Category A meeting. Safe travels home, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
All right.